Gambia, Africa. Hardly anyone knows where this country is located. It is wild, small, and spirited. And it is poor, like all countries in Africa. Gambia is the smallest country in Africa and completely surrounded by Senegal, with a tiny strip of coastline on the Atlantic. The fish from here lands on dining tables in Europe. Trawlers from the EU sail along the coast. Gambia doesn't have a fleet of its own. The British Empire left nothing useful behind from the colonial period, except a military base, which now serves as the capital, Banjul. After the British left, Gambia became a strictly religious Islamic state. Even today, street signs remind everyone not to forget their prayers to Allah. 95% of the 2 million inhabitants are Muslims. Only 2% are Christians. Today, Gambia is a republic. Banjul, the capital. These are the typical small shopping streets with street vendors, a few markets, but no significant industry. If you come to Banjul, you will be truly struck by Gambia's problems. The traffic is chaotic. A surprising number of old Mercedes-Benz vehicles from Germany pollute the air. Obsolete diesels generate really good money here as taxis. Africa has too little work, and it's no different in Gambia. There are no farms, hardly any crafts, a little bit of tourism, no education, no jobs, no perspective. It's not difficult to guess who suffers the most. As you travel to the interior, the poverty increases. Foreigners rarely stumble upon this part of the country. Perhaps a few young development workers. But retirees, especially from Germany, not likely. And yet, some actually do. 2 retirees from Heilbronn in Baden-Württemberg dared to go to Gambia. They are Christians. At first, they hesitated. A foreign country? Africa? Far too poor, far too dangerous. But Hannelore and Walter Krug changed their minds. Why? What happened?
So the first shock I experienced last year when we were here for the first time. And we saw it all. And that's frustrating, of course.
There's a stench in the air. Garbage and the food people eat lie closely together on the ground. You want to run away. But not the Krugs.
Precisely because we are doing so well, we should share what we have. And I have to say, we enjoy doing that.
The 2 Christians decide on a project, Love and Rice for Gambia. They set it up themselves and travel to West Africa several times. Fellow believers at home promise their support. The Evangelical Free Church in Neckarsulm and the Church for Bruchsal are on board. But many people back home still ask, how in the world did you come up with this idea? And why Gambia of all places? The story begins on the internet. Hannelore Krug wanted to keep in touch with her grandchildren via Facebook, so she learned how social media networks function. She was already over 70 at that point. One day, a friend request appears, not from the grandchildren, but from a girl in Africa named Fatou, an orphan. When Fatou was a small child, her mother was treated in a hospital in Gambia by a German nurse named Hannelore. As a 14-year-old girl, the young African stumbles upon the name Hannelore on Facebook again. She sends a friend request and gets an answer from Hannelore Krug. An unusual friendship begins.
Also Fatou hatte keine Eltern mehr.
Fatou did not have parents anymore. She lived alone with her brother. And she did not go to school either, because nobody paid the school fees. We became closer, and she really recognized and accepted us as mother and father. And we accepted her as our daughter.
Wir sie auch als Tochter.
If our life belongs to God, then we allow ourselves to be guided by Him. And we also saw it as an assignment to accompany these two people, to help them. And I have to say, it's a real pleasure to be able to help people, no matter where they are from. It is just so fulfilling. And Fatou has opened up. She tells me about her joys, her grief, about her illnesses, about everything that concerns her. And so many times she has written, "Mom, I'd like to hug you so much."
Ich möchte dich so gerne jetzt umarmen.
Hannelore Krug and her husband Walter decide to travel to Africa to visit the orphans Fatou and her brother Boubacar in Banjul, a small village in Gambia. There is no electricity here, no running water, no bathroom or toilet. It's not every day that they have something to eat. Malaria, snakes, poverty, that's everyday Banjul. The Krugs, who are parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents, leave their home in the beautiful town of Heilbronn in Baden-Württemberg and travel to the end of the world. Why do they take this upon themselves? At a time in life when others spend their old age in front of the TV or enjoy sunsets in Mallorca? The answer is found, as is so often the case, in childhood. As a young girl, Hannelore hears for the first time about the distant continent. Even at the age of 9, she thinks of only one thing.
Ich dachte nur an Afrika.
I only thought about Africa. And even as a child, I wanted to travel to this continent. I heard about Albert Schweitzer. We went with our school to the movie theater to see Albert Schweitzer in Obeve, in Lamborena, and I devoured the books of Albert Schweitzer, and I thought, I'd like to do that too.
Ich habe die Bücher von Albert Schweitzer verschlungen und ich habe gedacht, das möchte ich auch.
The Krugs get to know each other in the YMCA. Hannah is preparing to become a florist. Walter is a freight forwarder, and after his decision for Christ, he becomes secretary for the YMCA. When they marry in 1962, Africa is no longer a subject of discussion. They have 2 biological children, and they adopt 2 more, including a young boy with African ancestry. I was convinced that he was God's replacement for Africa, says Hannelore wistfully. He was a reminder of the place for which I longed. Decades later, Fatou, the Facebook acquaintance, reawakens the yearning for Africa. As Hannelore and Walter Krug witnessed the great hardship in West Africa on their first visit, the project Love and Rice for Gambia is quickly decided. Walter was almost 80 years old at that point. What does love mean? They want to bring the love of Jesus Christ to the people of Gambia. And what does rice mean? You can only open yourself to hear the Bible if you have something in your stomach. In 2015, the Krugs start to organize an unprecedented help for the smallest West African nation. Wherever the 80-year-old globetrotters appear, they are greeted with appreciation and sympathy. With the help of Brussels Airlines, which regularly flies to Gambia, the Krugs manage to get help to Banjul, sometimes even by ship. They get motorbikes and bicycles so that people can reach remote villages. For months, they collect computers, cell phones, sewing machines, clothing, and medical equipment. Today, a very special box is being offloaded. Hannelore Krug has brought clothing from Germany for babies and children, for the youngest in the village of Banjul. Robert Godel from the church in Bruchsal is one of 6 young Christians traveling with them this time. A bit shy and yet curious, the Muslim women are amazed by the unusual help from Germany. Many of them hear about Jesus Christ for the first time in their lives.
The point is that the children learn at an early age who Jesus is, that they have a support in life, because Jesus is the same here in Africa as in Germany. I try to make that clear again and again, that this is not just about rice or about school, but about holding onto that connection to Jesus, or about making it for the very first time. There are many women who are still officially Muslims, but who follow Jesus inwardly and love Jesus.
Aber die innerlich Jesus nachfolgen und Jesus lieben. It's all about the Bible.
Openly confessing Christianity is not easy. The majority of families are raised as strict Muslims. But a merciful God who brings rice and clothes arouses curiosity. The villagers sense the genuine interest of the German Christians, and so they pour out their hearts to them. What are the most pressing concerns?
There were often questions about medical needs. Someone had a snake bite and had to go to the hospital during the night. And you can only be treated here if you can pay. Then there were frequent questions about mosquito nets, about other medications, about beds. The children sleep on the floor.
What we want is to help with select needs. We just cannot do more. We are not a big organization. We are 2 people with dear friends and brothers and sisters in faith who help and guide us. But if we can help individual people, then I think we are creating multipliers. It's important for them to learn, study, work and earn a living here, which is possible. And there are positive signs for which we are very grateful.
A big problem in Gambia is the supply of food. While there are no drought and hunger epidemics like in Eastern Africa, people do not really have enough to eat. Gambia only produces and exports peanuts. Rice, which is the most important staple, is not produced in sufficient quantity, so it has to be imported, but is unaffordable to most. 5,400 Gambian dalasi for 4 sacks of rice, about $100. A large family in Gambia can live off this for about 3 months. After the work is done, Others at his age would now enjoy an afternoon nap, but not Walter Krug. The young man takes a long sip from the bottle, and then the 80-year-old gets into the car, without air conditioning. It's back to Banjul, the village that the German Christians actively promote and support. There is no agriculture, no business, no work here. Firewood is the only source of income. The villagers bundle and sell it along the roadside. Of course, it's not enough to feed the typically large family here. There is no famine, but very few truly have enough to eat. That's why there is such a rush and commotion when the rice arrives. Amazing how disciplined the residents are as they wait their turn in line.
Many of them frequently fast for a day or two at a time because they have nothing at all. And whenever possible for us, we send them money so that they can buy rice, like here, and then at least have a rice dish to eat. Often they have no side dish at all. They only have the plain rice to still their hunger. We can only learn from how Jesus did it. He preached the gospel to people, but he never let them go away hungry. He fed them. He did a lot with a little. And that's how we think too. If we want to share the gospel, then we cannot leave people with an empty stomach. Rather, we need to help them get enough to eat so that they can live and think. The gospel and social responsibility go together.
Und das gehört zusammen, so das Evangelium und die soziale Verantwortung.
And it works. We find the best example in Banjul, a new modern house, an exception to the neighboring hovels, built with donations from Germany and Switzerland. Boubacar and his sister Fatou are a similar success story. Boubacar was able to complete a welder's apprenticeship with the help of the Krugs, and Fatou became a seamstress. There is room here for the children to play. Small vegetable plots are the first steps toward self-sufficiency. The house offers space for many families and room for prayer. Helping people help themselves. It is especially important to the two Christians from Germany that the Gambians manage and are responsible for their own lives. This is aid to Africa that makes sense. The Krugs say the kids do not only need food provisions, but also life provisions. And that means they need education, like Boubacar and Fatou. And these children need a faith that gives them support and love and that carries them for a lifetime. It's Sunday, worship service at the Omega Church near the capital. Chairs are quickly dragged in. A special guest is preaching today.
I have to say, at my age, this is a whole new challenge. I have never preached in Gambia on Sunday, but I think it's nice to see that the Church of Jesus is worldwide.
The moment has come. For the first time, a pastor from the distant German state of Baden-Württemberg is preaching here in the West African town of Banjul in Gambia, with the aid of his wife as interpreter.
I want to read God's word in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 9, verse 9. Jesus passes the tax office, sees the tax collector, and says to him, Come and follow me. To listen to Jesus, to follow him. What a privilege this is for us. But that's one thing. The other thing Jesus wants is that we share in the responsibility in this world. And since we are in Gambia, it's about bearing responsibility for this country, as young people, as older people, that we live here in that responsibility.
Walter Krug does not avoid mentioning in his sermon the very thing that is pushing Gambia into the headlines of the world press, the mass exodus to Europe. More than 100,000 young men have fled from the West African coast of Gambia, across the Atlantic to the Mediterranean and onward to Italy, or overland to Libya, and from there with inflatable boats to Italy. People are hidden in warehouses like these at the fish market until they have some 200 to 300 men together for a single boat. The smugglers are well organized and connected. There is no Coast Guard. Without any control, the refugees stream to the beaches. Modern human trafficking flourishes on Gambia's beaches. In some villages, there are no young men anymore. Gambia is bleeding. The country has one of the highest per capita refugee rates in Africa. Walter and Hannelore Krug are asking Christians to intervene, providing answers to the greatest catastrophe of the 21st century. One of the most knowledgeable is Pastor Fadil Cisse. He reports that families pool their money so that one family member can escape.
What people pay usually between $500 to $600 to join one boat, and one boat can take up to 300 people. This boat sometimes they don't get to Europe. They stay in an island somewhere. This plastic boat, the smugglers will come. They have to pay those people also, transporting people from this boat to the seashore in Europe. Yeah. They hide them in a place where nobody knows anything about it, and then they connect with people with telephone calls, and they give direction, and they get there. And one night they all can go in and begin to move from here with engine all the way down to Canary Island or Lampedusa or even in Italy.
The refugee movement is based on a disastrous philosophy that it is the duty of the sons to feed the families, even if the fight for survival at sea or by land carries a high risk of death.
When they begin to describe the kind of waves that they meet with, you know that they just signed life or death to want to get to Europe. It's so dangerous, very dangerous.
As many as 5,000 Gambians have already died fleeing to Europe. One who escaped with his life is Alassane Diallo, who is now 20 years old. In his native village of Babylon, there is nothing to make life worth living. Alassane's parents are dead. He has no job, no education, but a big family, and Alassane must feed them. With this burden on his shoulders, his brother and sister send him away. There is only one person that Alassane can trust: Pastor Fadil. Alassane tells him the incredible story of his escape, a real odyssey.
My family has scraped together 30,000 dalasi, about $500 for a seat on the bus to get me to Libya.
50 refugees start their illegal journey via Burkina Faso, then Mali, Niger, and Chad, and onward to Libya. At each border, they are dragged out of the bus. Soldiers take most of their possessions. What isn't taken from them at the borders is stolen by gangs that stalk the buses from Gambia. In Al-Katroun in southwestern Libya, they are transferred to a pickup truck. Of the 50 refugees that boarded the bus in Gambia, 32 are still alive. After a few kilometers, the driver disappears in the middle of the desert. They make their way on foot to Tripoli, without food or water. In the capital, they fall into the hands of so-called government forces and rival Islamic groups. They are arrested and released after 2 months. Allison struggles through with occasional work. His wage is usually stolen or not even paid. His brother sends money to him in Libya so that he can travel back to Gambia. Allison is emotionally spent. He is alone. He can never forget the images of the refugees who died of thirst or of hunger right next to him. Fadil asks him if he would make the escape again.
No,
Why not?
I will not. Because the thing that I faced there is so hard. It's so hard to me. Yeah. Because even for me, I get a chance to come back. I went with many of my friends. Most of them lose their life there. So in my life, I don't think I would try it again.
Alison's older brother arranged the escape, and he has a very different opinion and puts pressure on Alison.
When our parents died, Alison became a breadwinner. Our families sometimes have more and sometimes less food to eat. It is Alison's duty to look after my family and my sisters. Alison is old enough. He has to go.
His own brother lays an impossible burden on the 20-year-old that he cannot bear. Alison's family is chasing a dream of Europe that isn't real and for which many have paid with their lives. The prospect of 50 euros a month is more important to Alison's family than efforts to improve conditions in their own country.
That's why it's so important to be in the country, to stay in this country, and to participate in shaping this country. It is important not to travel across the sea, to face the dangers, to flee, and to think that there is no alternative. And fleeing is no alternative.
But too many young Gambians see it differently. They believe, like the family of Alison, that money grows on trees in Europe. They would rather flee than seek opportunities in their own country. Adama Barrow also fled to Germany in 1988. His asylum application was rejected. Deportation. For the then 22-year-old, the world collapsed around him. But he did not give up. He made Gambia into his own Germany. Today, he is the president of the Republic of Gambia and says, if you are convinced that you can do it in your own life, then nothing will stop you. That's also a major topic in Hannelore's Facebook group. It's important to Hannelore to make it clear to the young men that they have no prospects in Europe without education and language skills. And she encourages the men to allow Jesus into their lives. He is a faithful companion upon whom they can depend, not on dreams in Europe.
Verlass nicht dieses Land.
Do not leave this country, your family, your friends, your faith. Do not abandon your responsibilities in this country. It's so essential that we use what we are, what we have, what we can do, all to implement that change. Many have gone, have fled. We see many men in Germany, for example, who live in our country without any prospects. And what did they achieve by escaping? Will it ever be enough to send back 50 euros from time to time, off of which others can live? How rarely is this the case? How many lose their lives?
Wie wenig ist das der Fall? Wie viele geben ihr Leben auf?
Only a few have the courage to get involved, like Hannelore and Walter Krug. They truly hear what people have to say, as Martin Luther demanded of preachers. Hannelore listens to women's worries at the fish market. This one says that her son is hungry and that she can barely feed him and his siblings. The work is difficult, she says, so she would be okay with that if her brothers flee to Europe to support the family. These boys also want to flee and make no secret of where they want to go. An older man says he is too old to flee across the sea himself, but he would pay for his sons to flee to Europe. In most of the families we have met, the fathers are no longer to be found. They are gone. And at the age of 16, 17, 18, the boys are already responsible for the whole family. And so they easily get the idea that by fleeing, they can send home a lot of money. And that is an idea that just can't work. Hannelore and Walter Krug can't stop the exodus to Europe. But they have already achieved a lot, in part because they have organized local help. They've sought allies, people they can trust. Aid to Africa does not work by simply transferring money. Hannelore Krug meets with one of her helpers in Gambia. She works closely with Pastor Moses Ukweni, a native Nigerian with experience in providing food to children. Moses plans to build a school. He understands the local bureaucracy. Wanting to help is very good, but some help quickly vanishes in corruption and chaos. That is why the two Christians from Germany need people locally, such as Pastor Moses Ukweni. We meet another important supporter of the Krugs here in Gambia's largest hospital. Many residents cannot afford treatment or medication in this hospital. There is no guarantee of medical care for the population. Some therefore live in great distress, while others just fake health problems. Many needy people turn to Hannelore and Walter Krug. That's why the two of them have a friendly doctor who's agreed to verify whether there's any truth to the problem described by those seeking help. Dr. Isaac Jabang helps to make the right decision.
What I basically do for them is simple. When they have their patients or their support candidates that need medical checkup, so they refer them to me. So I evaluate them. I take a proper history, examine them, and then see what their medical needs are. And depending on what their conditions are, then I refer them to do investigations and prescribe the right treatment for them. And I do that to also help so that we are able to differentiate, to help those that really need help from those that just want to make up stories to extort funds from outsiders. So.
Pastor Fadil Cisse is one of their most important local partners. Like many Christians in Gambia, he also endured a bitter experience when he converted from Islam to Christianity at the age of 16.
In the Gambia, we have a lot of churches in the Gambia, but churches are afraid when people leave Islam to become a Christian, because when they go into churches, Muslims storm in there, they storm some churches. They go and arrest some pastors, accuse them, just to create a story where they can just put Christians into trouble. And me as a Gambian, and me as somebody who studied Islam for 12 years, and then become a Christian, I know the background I'm coming from. And we registered to the government of the Gambia since 2012. We have our legal right, we have our certificate. That is why we battle with police, we battle in the courtrooms, we go after these people.
In Gambia, Christians are officially no longer persecuted. But in families, things are quite different. Over 95% are raised as Muslims. They do not know tolerance of other religions. Many are cast out and persecuted when they confess Jesus.
And we have different cases. And some cases we have to go to police stations, upon police stations. Some cases we have to go to courtrooms and raise funds to support them, to take a lawyer for them. Some cases we have to rent houses for them where they can live. Some we have to support them with food items and their house rents. Some, as we are speaking, I know about 13 children, young ones, who are not in school. Because their parents and the children follow them, become a Christian, they are sent out. They cannot go to school.
Fadil and his friends are doing something about this persecution. He and his missionary organization bought a piece of land in 2012. The first native Bible school in West Africa is being established there, IMWA. The churches in Bruchsal and Neckarsulm are actively supporting the project. The 6-acre land still looks pretty deserted, but to proclaim the gospel, they don't need magnificent churches. The host is enthusiastic about his IMWA mission school.
In my head, I see structures. I don't see one building. In my head, I see the school classrooms. I see buildings where the staffs are living. I see where the students are living. In my heart, I see gardening. I just see people in here. That's the picture I see. I can stand at the main entrance there and tell you everything on this land, how they are and how they are fixed. And I just amazed. It's just amazing. I don't know how I can explain it. Anytime it comes in my heart, I believe in God that it will happen.
Mission possible. The IMWA site is more than just the first mission school in Gambia. Christianity has a new home. Motivation for locals to also spread the good news of Jesus in West Africa.
I think it will solve one big problem that we are facing in our churches. Many people go to Nigeria, Ghana, England, America, some European countries to study Bible, theology. And I can tell you, 80% of these people never return to the country. Yes. So to have a mission school in the land of the Gambia, it is very much advantage in the sense that Gambians come to this Bible school, African comes to this Bible school, they are in their own culture, they are in their own community. When they learn to become missionaries, to become pastors, to become preachers, to become evangelists, they are out there, they don't have second thought, I want to go to Europe.
Help from Germany. 6 young Christians from the churches in Bruchsal and Neckarsulm paint the first house of the mission school. What motivates her to grab a paintbrush so far from home?
Because I'm up for it. I want to really change something. I want to have fellowship with the people, to help Fadil in his work. We should also support each other as churches, even across borders. That's why I'm here on this barrel. I love the kids, I love the people who are on fire for Jesus. I also love the work here because I know that we're doing something good, that will benefit the people here over the long term. And we're not just bringing something, but that we build something enduring here, and we're just doing our part, and it's something that will remain.
Ja, was langfristig ist, was bleibt.
And you only experience that in such a community. You can't experience that at home or on Facebook, WhatsApp or voice messages. It's just the fellowship we have here, the joy that we see in the eyes and that we work well together. We are one. We are all a part of the church. Whether we live in Africa, in Germany or in Russia, wherever. We are one body, and it is important that we stand together, that we also support each other, in prayer. That's super important. Sure, we can send money to them. But if you're really there, if you really have a connection, then it's highly valuable. I think the people need Jesus. I believe that they need his security, his love, and just the feeling that Jesus is with them and give them the love they need.
Well, I think it's a huge deal to experience things here, especially our brothers and sisters here, where there is indeed a difference, especially in regards to emotion. Particularly when you regard musical praise, how the Germans sing and how they sing here in Africa. That's a big difference. Take 3 Africans and 30 Germans, and the 3 Africans outdo the 30 Germans.
The young Christians from Germany also learn of the suffering of those who converted to Christianity in Gambia, impressions that Robert Godel will never forget.
We cannot even imagine that in Germany, because it does not exist in Germany. If, despite these struggles, a believer remains faithful to God, and he gives his whole life to God and trusts him, then God will never abandon him.
The second generation of helpers has arrived at the Imwa Mission School. For Walter and Hannelore Krug, a wish is fulfilled. Their project, Love and Rice for Gambia, is being handed on to young Christians.
What fascinates me about the school is that it's not just a biblical education for the ministry in one's own country, but that above and beyond that, we see the large field here. They want to work that field, to plant it, so that they earn an income, to ensure a bit of self-sufficiency for themselves, for the participants of the school. And of course, what they don't need, they can also sell.
Für die Teilnehmer der Schule und natürlich, was sie nicht brauchen, dann auch verkaufen können.
And the second thing that intrigues me about the whole thing is that they take in young people who are being shut out by their families because of their faith in Jesus.
Von zu Hause verstoßen werden.
There are still so many who need rice and love in Gambia, and that's why Hannelore Krug has this one concluding request.
Liebe Leute, ich würde euch gerne ermutigen.
Dear people, I would like to encourage you to help, to give, so that we can provide the people with rice and with other necessary things. And you can become active yourself. You can do that from the place where you live.
Aktiv werdet. Ihr könnt es auch tun von den Orten, wo ihr seid.
These two have given so much, have moved so much. But at some point, the time will come where their strength is at an end. Hannelore and Walter Krug say that was their last trip to Gambia. Really? Nobody, including God himself, really believes that.